All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a look at a piece of writing that is incredibly short, but absolutely stunningly beautiful. We're analyzing Carl Sandburg's famous poem, Fog. Honestly, I want you to just take a deep breath with me for a second, right here at the start. Let's establish a really calm, hushed tone. Just let all the noise of your day completely fade away. Because that quiet, still atmosphere, that is exactly the mood Sandburg captures using just a handful of perfectly chosen words.
Okay, let's dive right into this. The fog comes on little cat feet. Just let that silent, mysterious mood really settle in for a second. It is such an iconic opening line. I mean, in just 7 words, Sandburg completely changes how we visualize a simple, everyday weather event. Bam! He immediately invites us into this totally new world of imagination.
And that brings us to Section 1. Enter the Silent Hunter.
Let's move to the next idea and see how this builds. If we look at the literal surface of the poem, it's just fascinating how Sandburg operates using exceptionally simple language. There are no complicated, multisyllable words here that you're going to need a dictionary for, nothing like that. Yet, through that absolute simplicity, he creates an incredibly strong, vivid visual image of nature. Let's map out this perfect micro-narrative, showing the gentle, natural progression of the fog's lifespan over a city. Step 1, it arrives quietly. Step 2, it sits looking over the harbor and city. And finally, Step 3, it moves on. It's basically a tiny 3-act play happening in complete silence. We literally witness the arrival, the observation, and the departure.
Let's shift our focus now to Section 2, Anatomy of a Metaphor.
So, it's time to peel back the layers of this poem to discover exactly how the poet crafts this captivating mood. Because look, even though the poem is super short, there is a brilliant amount of literary machinery working right under the hood to make us feel that sense of calm. This brilliantly illustrates the comparison Sandburg draws between the literal weather phenomenon, the fog, and the symbolic feline. But why a cat? Well, because they share these highly specific traits: silence, smooth movement, mystery, and a real sense of independence. Just as a cat walks softly without making a peep, the fog arrives quietly and gently. By using this cat symbol, Sandburg makes the whole thing so much more imaginative and memorable than if he had just, told us the weather was getting misty.
Let's read these next lines slowly together. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches. Notice how the fog is being personified here. It's given human-like and animal-like qualities. It looks over the city. It pauses. It covers everything in total silence. This specific image creates such a profound feeling of calmness. The city underneath might be bustling and super loud, but the fog is just above it all, quietly watching.
Now, what's really interesting here is this specific word haunches. It basically refers to the bent legs of an animal, like a cat when it's sitting down. This single word completely anchors the entire imagery of the poem. It literally forces our brain to see the fog not just as some random cloud hanging in the air, but exactly as a cat observing its surroundings, totally poised, incredibly still, and completely in control of its environment.
So, let's briefly catalog the poetic tools Sandburg uses to pull this whole thing off. First, we've got the central metaphor, comparing the fog to a cat. Then we have personification, giving the fog these active verbs like comes, sits, and looks. We also have that incredibly vivid imagery of it physically covering the harbor and city. And crucially, this is a big one, Sandburg relies entirely on free verse rather than a fixed rhyme scheme or rhythm. There's no rigid structure forcing the words to bounce along to a predictable beat, which, if you think about it, perfectly matches the unconstrained, floating nature of the fog itself.
And that leads us to our final section, the message in the mist. So, we've looked at the surface narrative, we've broken down the mechanical literary devices, and now it's time to get to the core of the onion and reveal the deeper philosophical meaning hidden in these few short words, and then moves on. Just as a cat silently comes and goes, the fog also disappears quietly after its brief visit. The entire process of its arrival and departure happens so gently and naturally. It doesn't ask for attention when it arrives, and it certainly doesn't announce its departure when it leaves. It just moves on.
So the crucial point here is captured in these central themes. The poem is absolutely highlighting the raw beauty and mystery of nature and the silent movement of the fog. But fundamentally, it's about the temporary nature of natural phenomena. It perfectly captures the fleeting, temporary nature of the world around us. Things come, they sit for a moment, and they move on.
Which brings us to the ultimate lesson of the text. We really must learn to appreciate the quiet beauty of nature. Sandburg is teaching us that we need to actively observe the small details.
Why? Because some things in life, honestly, often the absolute most beautiful, mysterious things, appear and disappear entirely silently. If you aren't paying attention, if you aren't looking really closely, you are going to miss them completely.
So I want to wrap up this explainer by turning this back to you. And I really want you to think about this question. What silent, beautiful mysteries are passing by you unnoticed right now? Sandburg's poem is this really gentle challenge to all of us. It's a reminder to look for those quiet, mysterious moments in our own chaotic, super noisy world. So take a moment today to look for the fog on little cat feet in your own life. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and keep observing.